big challenge when it comes to execution. Number one, people really struggle with the idea of execution being a learned skill, a skill that you can build over time, a capability that you can build over time. So capability, knowledge, and skill, and then ultimately a behavior that you hone over time. So think about the way that you engage with your customers, both they're internal or external, or members of your team, or even people inside your family. What are some of the skills that you apply to help achieve results? And what are some of the behaviors you put in place to help people get there? So first, from a skill perspective, the ability, if it's hard to execute if you're not actually doing work. So are you doing the specific work that's necessary to achieve the given result? If you've not identified what the specific work is that you need to achieve the result, then how can you achieve the result? So let's start there. And I guess if we take a step back or beyond that, what we want to know is, what is the actual result that we're looking for? So what's our goal? So let's first make sure we understand what our goal is, the thing that we're looking to achieve. Then let's figure out what are the things necessary to achieve that goal. One of the challenges you're going to run into is someone will ask you the question, what more can you do? Are you doing everything you can? No. There always is going to be something more that you can do. There's always going to be something else that you can add to your list. And this is where, as a leader of self, you have to be very comfortable pushing back, having clear decision criteria around what you're doing, how you're prioritizing it. So what you're doing, what order you'll do those things in. And ultimately, when new things come across your plate, be comfortable saying no or eliminating. So we need to do work, and we need to not do work. All right. So we need to both do work and we need to not do work. What do I mean by that? We need to do the right work, and we need to say no to the wrong work. How do we determine what is the right work versus the wrong work? You can't reflect on what you're going to do. You have to go out there and actually do the work and say, when I do this work, do I actually get myself closer to the objective? Think about driving a car. If your objective is to get from Gilbert, where I live, out to Tempe, I know that I need to drive both west and north to get into Tempe. If I find myself out in Florence, a town that is both south and east of me, I'm going in the wrong direction. You do the work, then you reflect on, is the work working or not? And if the work is working, go do more of it. If the work is not working, feel very comfortable stopping it. One of the questions we want to ask in this process is, what's working, what's not working, and where are we stuck? The reason why we want to know those three things is you'll start to gain a high level of clarity around what should we, on the working, continue doing. On the not working, what should we stop? And on the stuck, where is there an opportunity for us to start doing some new things? This is all kind of the layout of, we need to understand the result. We need to know which work we're going to do, which work we're not going to do, and we need to have some kind of a reflective process that's going to help us get better at this. Here's how I do it. I like to use the game plan, which is all based on 3x3 modeling. Not a new idea. One of the challenges that people have, and Matt Ferguson shared this with me, and what he really liked about the game plan was I was able to connect the work to the goal, right? So how do you give, because you could have a crap load, almost said it, you could have a crap load of stuff that you're doing, all of this work that you're doing, this huge checklist. And for you, those of you who keep checklists and you have all these to-do lists and you just keep adding more and more and more to it, what you're doing is you're continuing to fill yourself up on this side. And what you're missing is the alignment of that work to the specific strategy that is connected to the goal. So if we have strategy, how? Strategy, I like to think about this as actions. These as actions. So we have actions that we bucket. We have bucketed actions that we put the work into. We can actually start to say no to some of the new things that keep getting added in. And when a leader inside the business says, hey, I need you to do this, you can ask the question, how does it align to the strategy that we agreed to that ultimately fits with the goal. And maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe they're not even thinking about it that way. They're just thinking, hey, I got to get this thing done. And I'm going to be able to delegate it off to you. Lead better by asking questions. So if we connect the dots between the work, those check boxes, the strategy, and the goal, we're going to be able to break things down into smaller pieces and make better decisions. Be able to decide, do we do it or do we not do it? We get the groundwork here. We lay out our strategy and tactics, and then we go out and actually start doing the work. This is where your 30, 60, 90-day plan, or your short-term, medium-term, long-term plan starts to play a role. So if you take all of this information and then start to break it down into what's next, short-term, what do we expect to have happen next after achieving those things or doing that work, and then where do we want to be in the long term, you can start to lay out specific waypoints that you expect to get to along the road. And if you lay those waypoints out on the road and you're actually starting to achieve those things, you will find that you're getting closer and closer to your broader goal and objective. The key piece here, and this is where I think a lot of people struggle, is there are a lot of folks that will go through and say, hey, I'm going to go out and build a plan. And we're just going to keep planning to plan to plan to plan to plan. You've got to start working the plan. And if I understand what are those things that need to happen in the short term, immediate next steps, next logical steps, so I can take them, then I can start to make progress and say, am I getting to the medium term? If I'm not getting to the medium term, then what did I miss in the short term? If I am getting to the medium term, now here's the surprising thing, that medium term becomes your new short term. Your long term becomes your next medium term. And the next period out there becomes your long term. So we're starting to build out. In psychology, there's a view on successive approximation. One of the things that you use to condition or train maybe a dog or build out a new skill. We're just breaking things down into smaller parts so that when we go out and do those things, the next logical thing that happens should occur. This applies in sales process. This applies in going out and getting eggs at the grocery store. This applies to being prepared for an amazing barbecue for the 4th of July. There are multiple ways that this applies to the way that you do things in life. Why not start applying it to the way that you do it in business or the way that you do it for yourself? Now, all of this stuff can be done by design, which is what we talked about last week, or it can happen or get pulled together organically. Most of us work organically. I will challenge you to look at your work and see what can happen if you actually do it by design. What happens if you execute, you succeed, you achieve results by design rather than hope? And in the spirit of the summer blockbuster, rebellions are built on hope. At the same time, hope is not a strategy. So let's build out your strategy and tactics so you can start achieving the results. And this is how I think about simplifying execution. Now, granted, you look at this, someone takes a look at this whiteboard, they'll say, how's that really simple? You've got a lot of stuff on it. Well, we broke it down into 3 different parts. We broke it down into what are our operating principles? How are we going to operate? What are we thinking about? Like, what are the results? What work do we want to do? What's working? What's not working? Where are we stuck? Reflection. We organize the work around strategy and tactics to achieve a goal. And then what do we lay out as far as what's next? All of these are individual sections. What you're going to find for you is you're struggling with one of these individual sections. Once you figure out where you're struggling, then you can go in and start deconstructing it, breaking it apart into smaller pieces and go out and actually achieve results. Go out there and execute. Todd Capone on his video earlier today shared some stuff around why people were able to forecast a bit better back in 100 years ago, I think is the time frame that he shared, but why people were able to forecast a little bit better back then versus where they are now. And I'll share a little bit about how we're looking at this inside our business, inside Catalyst, as Jen, Sean, and I get aligned on the work that we're doing. So what Todd laid out was the importance of awareness, interest, and then action. AIDA, which has been out there for a long time. If you use HubSpot, they'll do a lot of their marketing stuff around this, and many of the sales process pieces will be built on it. when people used AIDA, they forecasted better. And Todd's position on that was we were focused on what are the behaviors on the buyer side. So this is buyer behavior, and using it as a way to improve forecasting. I'll show you how we do it inside Catalyst and how we're looking at it. Now, the awareness, interest, desire, action didn't really make sense for the family. We wanted to come up with our own language. Yep. Come up with your own language so you can operate as a team. What we decided to do is look at this as know. So they know us. They are interested in us. So they know, they are interested. They buy something from us. And that interest actually was like. So they know, they like, know, like, buy, and then do. They actually go in and do the work. Now, from a funnel perspective and a behavior perspective, there are some things that we want them to do from a work period in here, down a little bit lower, that will help them start to see results with the work that we share and ultimately get to the point where they're buying. That's kind of what we're working through from how we're operating, how we're organizing content. So content like this should be one of those things where you see the live video. Now you know us. Ideally, you're engaging with this, engaging with the content. You think you find it interesting. So now we get into this piece of like, so you actually get to the point where you subscribe. So how do they say it on YouTube? Smash that like and subscribe button. So we get into like, and then now ideally what will end up happening as part of this whole kind of learn, think, act that you see in the newsletter, you think about things a little bit differently. You take action, you see that work working, and then you say, hey, how can we do more? So AIDA, like Todd was talking about, know, like, buy, do. In the buying piece, here's where a lot of people kind of screw up. And this is how I'm going to help you simplify forecasting or get better at forecasting inside your business if this is something you're interested in doing. In this stage of buying, let's break this piece down and say, okay, what's happening from a customer perspective? Well, customers going through their kind of game of life journey through here, and they're working on making decisions. And depending on the complexity of it, there may be multiple decisions that they're working on making, multiple people that get involved in it. There's different gates that they're going to go through. And if we lay it out, if you lay it out and work with your marketing team on it, you can kind of work through customer journey type stuff, lay out how does that journey look like? What's that decision-making process look like from a customer perspective, from the point that they become problem aware to solution aware to solve the problem and shout from the rooftops. So they get really excited and they've solved the problem over here. So what's that journey look like? On our side, from a forecasting perspective, what we want to do is we want to see people go through certain gates where probability of sale starts to increase. So forecasting, the three variables for me are amount. So that's going to be a number, time, that's going to be a date. When do we think that's going to happen? So think of compelling events, date, and then stage. What stage increases the probability percentage of likelihood that they're going to move forward with things? How do we take data? Customer journey is going to be unique for each of your customers. The sales process stuff doesn't need to be unique. You can standardize it. So here's what we use from a Catalyst perspective. First piece is validate. In this period, so we're going to take this down here, validate. Do we see a scenario where we could work with each other? If so, we've had two people meet with each other and we see a scenario where we could potentially work with each other, that's 5%. So our probability of sale on that would be 5%. Our amount might be whatever we expect the deal to potentially be, and maybe we've got some timing, but all of that stuff is going to move around. So validation, 5%. Qualified. Validated, qualified. I use past tense because people have gone through the gate if they've been validated. They've gone through the gate if they've been qualified. We're not qualifying. We're not validating. We're not in this messy middle of where a lot of weird things might be happening. So we go through and we do validated, qualified. From my perspective, there's a single question I want to be able to answer. I understand the problem from the perspective of the customer. I understand the problem from the perspective of the customer. That's a big one. And if you go through the problem-solving framework, that hexagon, you'll know what I'm looking for there. So it's what, who, why, how, when, and then timeline, short-term, medium-term, long-term. At this point, 25%, if I've got all of that information, my qualification checklist aligns with that hexagon. So we've qualified. The next piece is fit. Based on my understanding of the problem, I can actually solve for it. Simple question. Based on my understanding of the problem, I could solve for it. That's fit on our side. Then you go to client confirmed fit. Client confirmed fit is based on our understanding of the problem, do they believe that we can solve for it inside their organization? That's client confirmed fit. There's going to be a lot of back and forth here as you start to work through scope, and I like to use discussion documents to help work through that part of the process. In these places, I would go alternate between like 50 and 60%. Some people might go as high as 75% on the client confirmed fit, but validated, qualified, fit, established fit, client confirmed fit. As we move through these gates, our probability of sale is increasing. On this percentage side, that's increasing because we've moved through those things. We've accomplished some things. We've answered specific questions. Our amounts might be changing and our timeline might be changing. Time maybe moves out or moves forward based on what we know about compelling events, things like fiscal year, management-based objectives, events that are happening, and then amount based on our scope. So then we get to proposal approved. This is not proposal set. The customer on their side has approved the proposal. At a proposal approved perspective, I would expect 90% of those are going to go through, likely 100%, but here's the reality. Something happens. Sometimes you end up getting into a situation where you're just not going to be able to agree on legal language, or you may not be able to agree on something else, or somebody else gets inserted into the equation. But key pieces, we've got stages, validated, qualified, fit, fit on our side, client confirmed fit, proposal approved, closed won. That's 100%. And then at the end, after we've actually solved for the problem, we've actually done the work, we've got to this smiling thing, then we confirm that we did what we said we were going to do. That confirmation is a really good time to ask for some referrals. So this is taking AIDA, applying it inside our business, know, like, buy, do the work, and then inserting the Catalyst sale process in here to help get better at forecast predictability over a given period of time. Now there's 3 variables that we're looking at: amount, time, and stage. Here's the challenge I would give you. If you're a business leader who's trying to work through this on your side, sales leader, new sales leader, who has gone through the Sandler stuff, the Yellow Submarine, have gone through solution selling, have gone through all of these different things, and you've got your own sales process, whatever that is that you have implemented, I would go to your team and I ask them to describe, from a probability of sale perspective, what are each of the things that happen, and Todd nailed this, what are the behaviors that have happened on the client side that indicate higher probability of winning business. Have them lay out the stages. And what you will find is you might have the same names of each of the stages, but everybody inside the organization describes them differently. They may look at exit criteria or entrance criteria. My view is you're always looking at exit criteria because it's past tense. This was a thing that I realized after working with a number of different customers and trying to figure out, okay, well, where are we getting caught up on some of the confusion? Most of the time, people think that we're presently in that stage rather than looking at exiting that stage. That past tense piece has made a significant difference on my side related to being comfortable with forecast. The other thing I've changed over time is I don't really worry about stage names as much. Those are my stages. That's the Catalyst sale process. You can build out your own process, kind of like what we did inside the business: know, like, buy, do. When you make it your own, people internalize it. When you make it your own, you can adapt and iterate. When you make it your own, you can actually measure success against conversions that you're looking for. When you make it your own, you're not as focused on industry benchmarks. You're focused on growing and being a better version of yourself and your organization as you go through it. That is a live whiteboard session here on a Wednesday morning. I'm gonna see if we can do these a little bit earlier in the day so we hit both the folks out in Europe, the folks on the East Coast, and have everybody out here on the West Coast start their morning with something interesting. If you'd like to see something else up on the whiteboard, let me know it. If you have questions for me, please ask. And if you know somebody that this could help, please get out there and share it. Thank you.